Initially, your transition into Leca can feel intimidating. Putting your plants in a bunch of little balls feels pretty weird, right? Stop stressing, relax. Everything's going to be a-okay. I'm going to share some tips on how to transition your plants into Leca, then tips on how to maintain your plant in Leca. And make sure you're subscribed to the channel because I'm coming out with new videos every week, just like this one, where I share tips and trips on how to style your plants DIYs and more plant goodness. But let's just get into it. You can find timestamps and links down below. If you want to skip ahead, feel free to do so. Here we go. Transitioning your plants into Leca. You're gonna wanna make sure that your Leca balls are nice and squeaky clean, whether you're boiling them or rinsing them nice and thoroughly. Make sure that water's clear. Don't do it in the sink at first until that water's clear, because those clay particles can give you issues. So avoid doing that. There are smaller balls if you're looking to transition plants with smaller root systems, like finer root systems such as succulents, that may be easier for you to get your plant to stabilize itself in. Now, I've been kind of experimenting with lechuza pond. I've also been experimenting with my own DIY pond, an even mixture of lava rock, zeolite, and which make sure you buy the bigger stuff, not the too small of stuff. There's like different sizes, and pumice. The lechuza also has a fertilizer in it, but you know, you can kind of treat it like Leca, the semi-hydro, and add fertilizer to it. The only thing I really do differently is I don't start pond with a reservoir. Hold on to water a bit more than the Leca does, in my opinion. So I've just been flushing them at first. You can still make it work in Leca, but it may be harder to get your plant to stabilize. I've got some hoyas in lechuza pond that I've been experimenting with, and a few succulents as well. Clean roots is probably the most important step when it comes to the transition to Leca, and that's because any soil left on those roots will actually stay moist. It'll consistently stay moist because of the Leca. It'll just sit there and rot away at that root. It's the perfect place for that root rot fungus to grow. So the cleaner you can get those roots, the better. And to do that, you can use a soft bristle toothbrush or a hose, whether it's from your sink or your backyard hose. Using these things will definitely damage your roots, there's no doubt about that, and that's why after you do scrub it with a toothbrush or you rinse it off with a hose, you need to put that plant into a nice warm cozy spot where he'll be able to recover a little bit better. Treat it like it's been injured. You may want to get a heat mat. I haven't personally needed to get a heat mat. I don't deal with too cold of conditions. If you do, however, and your plants are dying, then maybe you should consider it. All right, now let's talk about choosing a pot, because this kind of can be overlooked, I feel like, a bit. I definitely overlooked it at first. Self-watering pots can definitely make Leca a bit easier because there's a gauge on it, so you can see exactly where the water level is at. You don't have to, you know, take your plant out, put it back in. But I also enjoy being able to use a bunch of different containers, like different glass jars or different bowls. You can use a standard nursery pot as well and just put it in a cache pot, you know, where it doesn't have a drainage hole, as long as it's a material where, you know, you can have standing water and like that. Terracotta obviously isn't going to be a good option because the terracotta will absorb a lot of the water, but there's a lot of different things you can do, and I like being creative with different containers, so I find that kind of fun, just like looking for different containers to use as well. I'm a stay-at-home mom, guys, you know, this is what I do for fun. With a lot of like the glass containers, you can drill a hole on the side of the container where the reservoir would be 1/3 of the way. When choosing what pot, you want to think small so that the roots are nice and cozy in there. If you have like a big pot, right, that means your reservoir is a little bit bigger, and that means the leca is gonna stay wet longer than it would if it was in a smaller pot, right? That's a big reason why you will also see root rot. So I add a reservoir right away. I do add Super Thrive into the reservoir the first couple weeks, as well as my plants are transitioning, which is just like it's a vitamin for your plants. After the first couple weeks, or until I notice that the roots are growing, then I will introduce some nutrients. One last thing before we move on to maintaining our plants in Leca, I do want to mention I personally have not found it necessary to water prop my plants first. The reason people do this is because when transitioning your plant into Leca, it will shed soil roots, start producing water root. The goal of it is kind of get ahead of the game. You know, you've already shed the soil roots, you've already got water roots, so there you go. But I've put half my plant in Leca, half of it in water, and I, transitioned both of them. Personally, I just haven't noticed any difference between the two. The only reason I do it is when I get home and I'm too lazy to like go through the whole process of transitioning the plant, and so instead I'll go like halfway, take it out of soil and just put it in water, and I'll be like, I'll worry about you when I have more time. That would be really the only time I've really been doing that. It's always good to experiment, why not? You guys are learning anything, you should just, give that thumbs up a good click and let me know. Greatly appreciate it. Let's go ahead and move on to maintenance. In the first week, we may be seeing signs of stress. Your plant leaves may be curling. You may see some yellowing leaves. Plant leaves may be dropping. Don't panic. This is normal. Your plants will just need to adjust to their new living arrangements. Now, just like soil, I do treat my plants all a little differently in Leca, even though the basics are the same for every plant. I just believe it's better to really understand individual plant care needs before caring for the plant. Like for instance, alocasia, that's a new genus of plants that I've brought into my collection. I didn't previously own them, so I've learned quite a few things now, like not to give up on this guy. No roots, no leaves, no problem. This guy will keep on living. It does go in like a dormancy period where it loses all its leaves, so putting it in the Leca may trick him into doing that. So maybe that's a plant that might be good to water propagate first, possibly. Maybe there's more benefits to that. I don't know for sure, but that's just my thoughts. And also it kind of made me feel better to water propagate him first, because now that I'm seeing him grow, I'm hoping I don't trick him back into thinking he's dormant, because I did leave my alocasia poly, I did leave him in the Leca and he recovered. He transitioned into the Leca and now he's happy as a clam. If you're gonna put your alocasia in Leca, you're likely gonna lose some leaves, so just saying. It is a good idea to check on your roots within a few weeks if your plant is like continuously going downhill, because it could be that you are having issues with root rot. I did make a whole video on root rot if you want to check that out. But out of all my plants I have transitioned thus far, my Monstera Addisonii, hopefully I said that right, has been doing the best. I've already had to reposition him into another container because he already outgrew the first one I put him in, which they are smaller pots, so it's gonna happen faster than in soil too, obviously, but it's really exciting to see. Now let me talk water a little bit. When I was first started with the Leca, I was using rainwater, and rainwater is perfectly okay to use, but you do want to make sure that how you're collecting your rainwater is coming from like a clean source. Like here in Florida, I get a lot of rain here, so it's impossible to go through all the rain in the bucket, so it's not like really getting dry and full. It's like consistently wet, so I get a lot of like frogs and things that like my rainwater, and over time it does get really dirty. And so I was using this water and I did notice that I was starting to have some kind of like fungus growth I'm, you know, not sure how many people are doing the same thing as me, but I'm just throwing that out there. If you got any issue with any kind of moldy stuff growing in the bottom, you may need to clean your water, or, you know, if you're doing it in glass, it's obviously like algae or something growing from the light. So if you are using like a see-through container, you may need to flush your plants more. But since then, I've been using filtered water, and that's been working for me. So until I am like not lazy and I can go clean out that barrel. You also just want to keep flushing to get any of those, like, you know, soil roots that are dying off, you know, get those out of there. But now it's been at least 2 weeks, right, since we've transitioned our plants into Leca. All our plants are looking happy. They're well adjusted to life in Leca, and it's time to fertilize. Now, I did do a video on fertilizing my plants in Leca, and I use this Fox Farms trio of fertilizers. The one thing that I did say in my video, I said that I have been replacing the reservoirs every week with nutrient water, and that is not the case. You do not want to do it that much. You can do it every 2 weeks instead. Every other week is all you need. I'll link the video here if you want to go check it out. But whatever fertilizer you're using, just make sure you dilute it to at least 1/4 strength. If your water levels are not going down, you likely have a problem. Your plant clearly isn't absorbing the water like it should, so maybe your pot is too big, or perhaps there are some rot issues going on and your plant is just not drinking anymore because it's rotten. If that's the case, you also may want to go get into those roots and have a look-see on what's going on down there. So there you guys go. There's my tips. This is what has personally worked for me. If you've had a different experience in Leca, please share with us in the comments below. I'd love to hear about your experience.